So you are now in Ciudad Real. You live in Ciudad Real.
That's right.
Okay, and you teach English.
Yes, I do. You can call it that.
Oh,
You can call it
all
that.
right. Later we will talk about the traditional methods and how you teach English, the grammar, vocabulary, what about your ideas about teaching. But tell me, people like listening to stories. What's your story? Why did you become a teacher? Maybe there is something in teaching that you really like. Well,
Yeah.
there is something very specific about that. Maybe you met one person one day and inspired you to become a teacher. Something
Yeah.
happened in your life
Yeah.
to become a teacher. What's your story?
That's right. Well, I was writing about this the other day. I have an account on Substack where I share my stories, and I was actually sharing this the other day because I think it's important that I wanted to be a teacher when I was very little,
Mm,
and I was always good at telling stories. Some of them weren't true, uh, but I was very good at convincing people from a young age that things were true, and my teachers would say, "Oh, she's a little storyteller." I remember that a lot. But my teachers weren't very encouraging, they pointed out all of the things that I did wrong. And one in particular, because I grew up in many countries. So I have had the pleasure of being in school in England, in Spain, and also in the Middle East, in a place called Bahrain. So I've had lots of teachers, lots of different types of schooling, and I never felt valued. I never felt like I could be anything. This happened at home. My parents said I could do anything I wanted to do, but my report cards and anything I was given at school didn't reflect this. So I was very lost. When I graduated from university, I chose business. I shouldn't have chosen business anyway, but I was very lost. So I went into marketing, I went into tourism, and it was in tourism that I discovered storytelling because I went on lots of guided walks. I was actually working in health and safety in tourism, but I got to take some tourists to the Alhambra in Granada, and I started telling them about the Alhambra. And I knew hardly anything, but I just kind of made it up, and they loved it. And I thought, this is amazing. And I thought maybe I could be a tour guide, but when you're young, you're kind of just led by different people and you have to earn money. So I guess I didn't know what to do in order to earn money. I was like, how am I going to earn money doing this? In Spain, you need to be an official tour guide, you need to do your exams and civil servant. So that really wasn't on the cards for me. And I was working in the south of England in Brighton in health and safety. And I remember my friend saying to me, I'm going to start up an academy in Alicante. Do you fancy coming and being a teacher? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I could teach. My grammar's not very good. I have to be able to explain grammar. And she's like, yeah, but you're a native, and all they want is for you to be a native. And I was like, okay, that's very strange. Don't they want me to be able to teach? So, but I was very lucky when I arrived in Alicante because even though that academy didn't work, um,
mhm.
I started working in nursery schools with little children. I started singing to them. I started sharing rhymes and games and just like puppets, and it was amazing. It was like I loved it. My hour and a half I did every morning in the nursery school was like, wow, this is cool. And then obviously I had to teach, prepare for exams, A1, A2, B1, blah, 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 blah. And this is kind of how everybody I speak to here views English. Like it's a qualification. You have to be a native to teach me, and it has to be a qualification, and my grammar has to be perfect. And you're like, no, your grammar does not have to be perfect. If you go to England, you realize we don't speak grammatically correct either. And here it's all about speaking perfectly before you even open your mouth. And I was like, that's got to change. So I left the traditional methods and I came up with a method of teaching through storytelling, connecting with my students through each of us telling stories, writing, and now writing poetry. So it's kind of evolved my teaching to match what I feel my students need. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think it's paradoxical because forcing someone to speak in a perfect way doesn't make someone to learn a language. It's like
Nope.
people think in a very intuitive way. It's more counterintuitive. It's like more
Yes.
you need to be imperfect in order to learn. You need to like to be brave to speak. First, you need to speak, and then you will learn. Because in Spain, something I think there is something wrong with the traditional system because a lot of people study English for 12 years, 13 years in school, in high school, but and later the people don't feel confident. It doesn't happen in Norway or in Slovakia. There is something wrong in Spain or with the traditional system. What's wrong? What's wrong here? What do you think about it?
Right. Well, I mean, it's very antiquated for a start. I mean, the system was developed. I had a conversation the other day about this. The system was developed 200 years ago in Prussia, for a socialist society. And what you wanted them to learn, but you didn't want them to learn enough to leave, to
Mm.
aspire to anything else. And we've just copied this methodology, and then, huge examination boards have jumped on the bandwagon, maybe 100 years ago now, some of them have started. And even though they have tried to make their materials more fun, language dies in a textbook. It dies. You read a text and you think, oh, okay, this is quite interesting. I could relate to this. But then when you have to like then gap fill and think of the right word to use, the preposition, etc., it dies. And then it's very uninspired. And I my class was like divided into two when I worked in an academy. It's like the haters and the lovers. The lovers were the very ones very good at memorizing, very good at, they were high achievers in the traditional sense. And then the other lot were like, odio el inglés, I hate English. But when they failed their exams, they then lost the inhibition. So they started speaking and they didn't care whether they said it grammatically incorrect. And that, I thought, that is the key. That is where we're going wrong. I see the teachers writing on the board, el verbo to be, and they're like, I am, you are, and they have to
Mm.
just repeat it like being a soldier in the army. And it's not about that. It's seeing it in a story, in a poem, and then going, okay, and working it out for yourself. It's like you pointed out the other day, how do they acquire grammar? And that's what it's about. It's not about memorizing grammar or learning it, it's about acquiring it. And then later, when you get to an advanced level, then you can fine tune. And I have this
Mm.
great book I use, My Grammar and I, which is, going back to how we're taught grammar in schools, because we're not taught it officially in England. We learn it through reading and listening and etc. So, it's about fine-tuning an instrument, and then you can be a little bit more perfect, but your second language is never going to be perfect. And that's what you have to be okay with. That's what you have to
Yes,
accept.
and it's difficult also for the teachers because they have 20, 30 students in classroom and they need to follow a method because
Yeah,
otherwise
yeah,
they would be crazy because it's impossible to deal with so many students at the same time and I need to
yeah, yeah,
follow this book. So it's
yeah,
more like the structure, like it's not the
yeah.
specific fault the teacher or the student. Yeah, but maybe there are some students, maybe you find students that really like grammar because it's like a puzzle, because they enjoy playing with words. Like when we study a language such as Russian, which is a language with a lot of grammar, maybe it's like a Sudoku, like creating something very logical. There are people that really enjoy grammar in a natural way. Maybe you find a specific kind of student.
Of course, there's a student for
Mm.
every method, and I think it is impossible for a teacher to have a method that suits everyone. So I guess in school, they use this method, but then when parents go outside of school, think, okay, I need an academy, I need for them to communicate, then they should look for someone where the child is able to express. And I think that's it, because sometimes what happens, they go into another school afterwards and, in the afternoon, and they just study the same thing as they do at school, which is not helping them. I always compare it to chess. Like chess, you have so many rules that when you first start playing, it's like, oh, where do I move, right? I know so many things about this game, but I don't know how to make the first move. Whereas if you give the person, it doesn't matter what age, you'd start teaching them through song and poetry and stories, then it opens their minds to, this is about communicating, this is about expressing myself. It's emotional, and grammar is not emotional. It's a puzzle, as you say. So grammar would be perfect to teach for, someone that likes Sudoku, etc. But then would they be able to speak with it because they'd be
Mm.
so perfect in their head that the first sentence, would be difficult to say. I think that's kind
Yes.
of key there.
And chess is a game, whereas for most people, for some people, grammar is not a game. Grammar is kind of a torture or something different from a game.
Me.
Yeah.
Yeah, grammar was a torture for me. Grammar, so when I came to Ciudad Real 12 years ago, I thought, okay, maybe I should get the C2 in Spanish, and then I would sound all clever and intelligent when I spoke my own, this second language.
Mm.
So I bought the books, the Cervantes material, and I sat down, and within 10 minutes of doing the listening, I was bored,
Mm.
and it was like pulling teeth. I was like making up excuses not to do it every day, because I was studying on my own. And that's also the key. It's like, do we study a language or do we learn to enjoy it? And so I
Mm.
thought, okay, this is not going to work for me. I'm just going to absorb Spanish through, reading it. But then I couldn't really find an author I liked. And then it wasn't until I had my child, when I started reading to him in Spanish, that my Spanish has suddenly started to improve, and I'm able to be creative in my second language. And I think that's the goal. When you really want English or a second language to be part of your life, maybe the key is finding creativity within that second language so it will last forever. Because when
Yeah.
I left Spain at age 13, I lost 80% of my Spanish. 80%, because I didn't practice it, I didn't speak it. I had two films to
Mhm.
watch so I could learn, and that was it. No one spoke Spanish in Bahrain in those days. Now there's loads of Spanish living in the Middle East, but back then there wasn't. So you can lose a language very quickly. And if you're in the studying, if you have the habit of studying, you're not going to study when you don't need to. That
Mm.
Soto Caballo y Reyes, Sota Caballo y Rey, algo así, no? Yeah,
Mhm.
it's like you just study for an exam and then it's like boom, and then you don't do anything. So it's like the key is finding a way so the English lasts the test of time, or your second language, the learning journey, I like to call it.
Yeah, having a need is useful. Maybe it's because I want to travel to another country, maybe because I want to write a book in another language. Like anything could be useful. But there are some people that think it is just me. Like I'm not good at learning English. There are people that think in that way, and that's all. Like it's something objective. I
Mm,
am 30 years old,
mm,
I'm 40 years old, and yeah, I'm
mm,
good at doing a lot of things, but it's just me.
mm,
I'm not good at learning English. I'm not good
yeah,
at
yeah.
learning French. It's just not my skill. Like Maybe
That's
it's
right.
not their fault. Maybe it's
No.
because of the traditional system, but but it's like it's very difficult to change the mindset for a lot of people.
Very,
What uh,
very.
what can we say to those kinds of
Yeah.
people?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I experience this with parents. So they say that they've never been able to learn English, that they hate English, but they want their child to learn English, but they feel like they don't want it to affect their own language. You know, like where I teach in the nursery, some parents haven't signed up their children because they want them to learn their own language first. And it's a mistake because this is the time when your brain is open to different types of well, everything, right? I mean, not just languages. So I think I always say to people, they say, I'm very bad at English. They have all these expressions they say to me about how bad they are at English, how much they hate it. And I always say the same thing. I was like, if you find enjoyment in something that is in this language, that is the way you can learn it. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's very, very, very slow. I start my coaching always recommending atomic habits, right?
Mm,
Because it's like little chunks every single day, consistency and enjoyment. It's like you find something that gets your attention, like you want to your favorite series or something, you'd love to listen to it in English, maybe. So maybe you could try that. I always try to give them another option, and it's surprising that they don't know about this. You see, I used to think, but it's so simple, just find a way you can learn. And they're like, the only way to learn is grammar. It's like we've been brainwashed here. You know, we have to get the B1 to prove that we can speak English, and then B2 to prove that we are more advanced. It's like
mm.
they need to prove it. And if they don't pass English, then they're a failure and then they hate it and it's lost. And that is very sad.
Yes.
Sad.
Tell me about your method, your ideas. What are some maybe 3 or 4 keywords that describe your style? Maybe it's
Okay.
creativity, one of them. Maybe it's
Yeah,
passion,
creativity.
energy.
Yeah, definitely. Creativity is big. Natural, you
Hmm.
know, very natural. I don't go to a child, hello, how are you? I speak normally. I speak normally to everyone. I do slow down. I don't speak as fast as I would speak to my, um, parents or anything. But right, so creativity, being natural, empathy, finding out
Hmm.
what is wrong? Why don't you like it? What's happening with that child or that adult? You know, tell me your story. Stories. Song, rhythm, rhyme. These are very important when learning a language. There's a wonderful author called Roald Dahl. Roald Dahl, I don't know how you pronounce him in Spanish, but he wrote Matilda and Charlie Chocolate Factory and you know, this author. He has some amazing rhymes for kids that like a little bit rude, a little bit controversial, but they're so funny, they're hilarious. And my class I do with 6 to 8 year olds is about rhyming. So we look at words and we play with them and we it's all about bringing the language alive. It's about speaking it, communicating it. And I think that's the foundation of my methodology, which actually I'm in the process of publishing, well, not publishing, editing to publish, writing, editing, publishing. It's a process. I've been asked to write about my method, by a couple of
Mhm.
people that could help me to publish it. And so I'm working on that now, is, getting down to the precise key concepts of how I teach English.
Mhm. And you were inspired by by other teachers, by other methods, maybe the Waldorf methodology or
No, I knew
mm,
nothing about Waldorf methodology. I knew nothing about Montessori methodology, was where I sent my
mm,
son. I sent him to a Montessori. preschool. I didn't study education. I studied marketing and
Mm.
tourism. My background is not education, and I think that is a good thing because I have fresh ideas that are not connected to any traditional methods, and I don't follow any rule book, But I know that people require me to have it written and know in order to explain myself, explain what I do, and attract people to this methodology, I need to have it written in a concise and manner that makes sense because I'm such a passionate, creative person. But I need to focus and say, right, this is what I offer,
Mm.
this is what you're going to get. Um, you know what? The problem area, I guess is the area I would like to build on is connecting with teens, right? I have no problem connecting with teens in the classroom. I did a storytelling course a couple of years ago with some teenagers, and it was fantastic. How they had told me they never have told a story in English they'd never done any public speaking, they'd never created anything in English before, or even in Spanish. And I thought, my goodness, there's so much I can share with them. And after that course, I felt really inspired. And so I advertised to attract teenagers to my courses.
Mhm.
But I got lots of interest, but parents wanted me to teach grammar. Oh, but I can't see here, Lisa, that you're teaching grammar. I said, well, I will always resolve a grammatical issue if they have a problem, but I don't teach it officially. Well, in that case, I prefer to go to an academy or, and I think, okay, fine. But why go to an academy when they're just going to do the same thing they do in school? Because of exams. Teenagers between the age of, is it like 15, 16, 17, they're doing selección. It's really important.
Mhm.
Their grammar needs to be perfect. And I guess this age range, they have to have more grammar classes, I guess. But they're missing the point. How are they going to communicate? How are they going to express themselves in an interview? AI can
Mm.
send the letter to the company. AI can do, yeah, your email instruction, your CV. It can do everything. But the AI is not going to be in the interview room with you, telling you what to say. You are going to have to do that yourself. And I think parents need to know that getting a sobresaliente in inglés,
Mm.
full marks, is not going to get them a job. Nobody asked me what I got in my exams when I went for a job. All they wanted to know is, can I do the job? Can I explain myself? Can I communicate? And I think that is so important. And we don't have that here. We don't have that type of information. Nobody seems to know this. They just think, got to pass the
Mm.
exam, got to get the high mark, and that with the highest mark, I'm going to get the job of my dreams. And no, you are not.
No, it's more complicated actually. And imagine that you are going to USA, to England, and you need to teach Spanish to kids. I don't know, maybe the same rules apply for teaching Spanish or other languages, or it is just for teaching English, because maybe languages are different. Maybe we need to teach Spanish or Japanese or Chinese or English in different ways because the grammar is different, the vocabulary is
Mm,
different,
mm.
the mindset is different as well. Or
Yeah.
these rules
Yeah.
apply for any language.
I think it's a lot to do with culture, okay, more than the
Hmm.
language, because I think language can be taught through song and poetry and rhyming, whichever language it is, right? I think, I have a very international circle of friends that speak many language. I
Hmm.
know a lot of multilinguists who have seven languages, running at the same, they can communicate and swap between, and I think. So that teaching method, I think storytelling applies to all languages, in my opinion, in my
Hmm.
experience as well. But I think it's culture. That's what the key is. It's like when you teach Russian, are you going to teach the Russian culture with it? The mannerisms, the customs, the opinions, they're so different from what we believe in. And Japanese as well. When I went to Japan, the culture is so different. They have a different way of thinking. And I loved it. I really enjoyed it. And it's like, okay, so if I was to teach Japanese, I would definitely include the culture because that, is a wonderful part of the language. And I think when you're learning a language, it's really important to associate it with a culture. When you
Hmm.
study English or when you learn English, are you going to learn it the American style or are you going to learn it from Australia or South Africa? It's very important. It really does change how you do it, and changes for the person learning as well. It's a very different experience.
Yeah, because besides English and Spanish, you can speak other language. You speak Chinese or
No,
Japanese.
I don't. I have an aunt who is from Hong Kong. She speaks
Mm.
Cantonese. No, I didn't. I didn't learn. What happened was I lived in Bahrain and I would have loved to have learned Arabic, but we weren't allowed to because Arabic was for the Arabic students, and it was like, no, you've got English and French in this school. You're not allowed to learn. So I went into school, and then I wasn't allowed to do the French because I hadn't done French previously, and I would hold the class
Mm.
back. So I wasn't allowed to learn French. So now I'm learning French with my son because he's in a bilingual French school. And I went to the teacher last year or 2 years ago, this French teacher, and I said, okay, I want to learn in French at the same time as my child.
Mm.
And she says, okay, great. So she gave me a couple of examples of what songs they sing, but she handed me a memory stick with grammar exercises. And I was like, no, that's not going to
Yeah.
work with me. So now I have an English-French exchange I do with another mother, and we are learning French through song and rhythm and rhyme and musical instruments. And so I think what's going to happen now is because I hardly had any French before, I'm going to see how I can build up French in my 40s, and then I can then share it with the world and say, look, I'm 48 and I speak, or I get to 50, maybe it's going to take me 2, 3 years. I'm 53 and I speak, French fluently, and I learnt it through the
Mm.
same
Mm.
methodology I use, and that's what I would like to prove. That's
Yeah.
what I aspire to.
Actually, everything has to do with the emotions, the rhyme, poetry, learning with other human beings, because language is like a human being, it's like a living being, and it's always changing. Maybe it's the rational mind that because of the rational mind, we cannot learn languages, or we cannot learn with enjoyment. Everything has to do with emotions, the feelings, the right brain. You know the division between left brain and
Yes,
right
yes,
brain.
yes.
Um, there is something now that you know about learning, about teaching that you didn't know 2 years ago or 3 years ago? Something specific?
Oof, where do I start, Eduardo? I'm constantly learning all the time about languages. Like I was reading about the mirror neurons the other day, how
Mm.
we learn through mirroring. And now in my classes, I do things and show them how I'm doing it, and then we sing a song while we're doing it, so that the activity like building blocks. Okay, we're building blocks, we're building blocks, and then we're showing, and then so they're mirroring what I'm doing, and then they're learning the song because they want to join in. And that's something as well. So being a teacher is a constant learning process. I never know everything. And it's so true what they say that you learn from your students is true, but they can learn so much from you too. It's like a give and take. So I think these are the things that the more I read about learning in the brain, for example, I'm mostly inspired at the moment by The Enchanted Hour. Okay, and it's talking about the miraculous power of reading aloud in the age of distraction. Okay, so we have our little friends here, that can get our attention straight away. So it's how do we teach our children You know, the art of reading and learning in this age where it is so easily to get distracted. And I think this is the key thing I've learned over the last couple of years is that reading aloud is the most powerful way to learn. A lot of my students complain that they don't get to speak English, so they don't get to practice it. And I said, read this text aloud, read this story aloud, and you're speaking and you're listening to yourself, you're hearing your own voice, you're gaining confidence and getting used to it. You know, the sound of your voice, your accent. That's another thing that's very prominent here. It's like, oh, I can't speak, my accent's terrible. I'm like, okay, it's a Spanish accent. More people in the world now speak English as a second language than English natives. I really don't like this term, Eduardo. When someone says to me, "Ah, eres nativa, you're native," I'm like, because I'm not okay. I'm native and I bring culture to my classes, but I don't think that's the thing they have to look for. The thing they have to look for is can I connect with their child? Can I inspire them? Can I get them to speak? Can I get them to learn and communicate and use English? That's what they need to be looking for, not the fact that I'm native. I think that's ridiculous.
Mm.
I mean, so there are native people that can't teach languages. Do you know what I mean? So that's the thing that really bugs me here when someone says that to me.
Yeah, maybe with the languages, the lessons are working when the students talk more than the teacher. Sometimes it happens that way because if the teacher is always talking and talking, because I had that experience when I was studying German. Like I had a teacher that talked for 2 hours and we didn't know what to do. Like, okay, you are talking about your ideas, your grammar, but I don't understand you. Sometimes it happens with some teachers in the traditional system, but you always encourage people to talk more than the teacher, maybe. Mm.
It's important. I'm a very talkative person and I love telling stories and but I really have to make an effort to stop myself and say, okay, now it's your turn, you know? And sometimes I'm very excited about what I'm about to teach. So I tend to speak a lot, but I do. It's very important. So I recently did an Erasmus preparation course. In the university here in La Mancha. And the first class I prepared was very interactive. They spoke a lot, they talked to each other, they were enjoying it. But then the second class was more theory, like giving them advice. And I got to like I think it was an hour and a half in total, and I spoke for the first 45 minutes, and I think I really did lose a lot of them. And so I've really learned from that. And, I get to teach this course again in March, and I feel like, okay, I'm ready now. I know I can send them that information that I told them. I can do a little introduction, but then I need them to talk the whole way through. And I think, I can tell them a story so they can relate to experiences. Going abroad for the first time is very difficult, especially if they've never left home before. So I can tell them a few stories that have helped me. But I think I need it to be more practical and it's definitely people don't get the opportunity to speak English here, and I need to give them that. Yes, exactly.
And reading aloud is a very interesting thing to do, like something very specific. And that it's right that we hear our own voices, and it's weird sometimes when we record our voices and we speak in another language. Like it's not that is not my voice, and I don't understand myself talking in English or in French. But that's okay.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah,
process. Maybe we
yeah.
need to make fun. At ourselves. We need to laugh at that. Okay, I'm talking in English, in French. I don't understand what I'm saying. And my pronunciation is weird nowadays. But maybe later it will be better. Let's do it for fun.
That's
Let's
right. And
enjoy the process, even though it's not perfect the pronunciation and that. Hmm.
it's very true. And also, it is very weird to listen to your own voice, especially speaking in another language. but it is a process. And once you get to that level where you start to self-correct, that is a huge advancement. That's when you know that you are getting good. And I always say to my students, I haven't had to correct you at all, because I usually wait till the end of the class to, or the end of the reading to correct them, let them speak, and I don't want to cut the flow, which I used to do before and realized it wasn't a good idea. And so, I say, this is amazing. You're self-correcting. I haven't had to say anything. This has been a highly enjoyable conversation. You don't need me anymore. Go off, read your books, read aloud. And then if you feel like you're becoming demotivated and you're losing it a bit, call me again and we'll have another few sessions. I don't want students that need to have me all year round every week. I don't want that. I want them to learn on their own, to become self-sufficient and know that they can motivate themselves. And then when they like start to lose interest, and then they can call me and go, Lisa, I don't know, I read that book, but now I don't know what to do and I'm losing my English again. I'll go, okay, let's start again and let's find something that's going to inspire you. And that's kind of, I think that differentiates me a lot from the traditional methods, of
Mhm.
what's out there at the
Okay.
moment.
So thank you very much, Lisa. Another day we make an interview in Spanish.
Okay, great,
Let's
great. Thank you so
let
much.
let's finish now, and we are in contact. We talk to
Excellent,
each other.
excellent. Thank you.
So
Thank you so
see
much. It was very
see
good to talk
you,
to you.
see you later. Have a good
See you
day.
later. Bye bye. Bye bye.